Hello guys and welcome to this new lesson. Today we'll introduce the basics of AngularJS. I've added to the lesson a resource content with a zip file where you find the index.html that I'm looking at. So if you open that, you should have seen a template like this one. This is just a Bootstrap starting template. If you're not familiar with Bootstrap, you can find it on the getbootstrap.com website. It's an HTML, CSS and JS framework. And we will just use this framework to improve the look and feel of the application we'll be building during the rest of the course. Let's take a look at the file I provided. What we want to look at is just the set of scripts, JavaScript, that I've included. If we scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see that I've included jQuery, Bootstrap, and Angular straight from the CDN as I showed you guys in the previous tutorial. So if we now have a look at the rest of the application at the very top, there are just the CSS we want to use and a set of meta tags. You can ignore that for now. This script here is in case somebody is still using old versions of IE. And this is actually where we are going to write our content for this lesson. So if you guys want to start writing an Angular application, the first thing you have to do is to type ngapp as an attribute in this case the HTML. But what is ngapp? Ngapp is a directive, and as we will see in a minute, a directive is something that Angular offers us to extend the HTML, to teach it something new. And this specific directive defines the scope of our application. So whatever is included between the tags where we have added ngapp will be all our Angular application. So in my case is HTML, it means that everything in the entire document will be part of our Angular application. So let's introduce the directive before keep going with the actual code. So as I said, directives are used to teach something new to the HTML. But what does this mean? It means that they offer a new way to build our HTML or to create our own domain-specific language. By domain-specific language, we mean that, for example, we have a tag P for paragraphs, a tag div for divs, or other tags like the head tag, the body tag, the footer tag, or a full list of tags that HTML offers us. But what they really don't do is to add behavior to our application, and we can do that by using directives. So for example, let's think about a slider. You might want to use a slider in different parts of your application. What you usually do is you write all your code for your slider, and every time you need it, you write the entire code again. With a directive, we can just define the snippet of code we want to use and give it a name, for example, slider, and we'll go back to our code and we'll type something like this, slider, and that's it. So imagine that we wrote a directive that tells HTML what a slider is, and every time we write slider in our code, the slider will be rendered. We'll see how to do that in a few lessons actually, because it's more advanced. But let's keep going. So directives, as I said, they offer a new way to build HTML. They are used to create new specific behaviors for document object, module object. They modify the behavior as well. There are two families of directive. One are the built-in directives, so directives that are already existing within Angular. And the other ones are the custom directive, which are the ones that we will create on our own, like this slider directive that I just mentioned. So if we want to go through a very short list of the main directives, we have ngapp, which is used to bootstrap the AngularJS application, as I just mentioned. We have ngbind and ngmodel that we'll see in a minute. And then we have ngcontroller, ngrepeat, ngview,ngshow, ngHide, ngClass, and lots of other directives. And no worries guys, I'll be covering all of them. In this lesson, we'll cover just a few of these directives, and will be ngapp, ngbind, and ngmodel. Let's go straight to our application. as I said, we have added our ng-app directive, but there's something else we have to do, which is defining the module for this application. So we'll type equals, and here we'll type my first app. This is the name of our module, and by module we can think about it as a container for everything that that is used by our app, so controllers, services, and so on. So in general, you can define multiple modules in your application, but for this example we will use one main module, which will anyway suit our application. It becomes useful to define different modules when we want to write reusable components and inject that through the dependency injection in our application. We'll talk about dependency injection later on, and I'll show you how to create an additional module and inject it. So after creating the module name, we need to add a new file this time. We'll call it app.js. In brackets, every time I add a file to my folder, it will be automatically created, but if you use another editor, just add a file in the same folder where you have index.html. I will go down here, script, src equals app.js, and that's it. We save it. And now, in here, we need to declare our Angular module. So we declare a variable, my app equals angular.module. I use this nice snippet, which is ng module. We'll give it a name, which is my first app, right? The one we have defined in here. And empty square brackets, these empty square brackets are used to define the dependencies, but for now there's none, so that's enough. And here now we can start working on the modules, the model. So say that we want to add in this empty page an input field where the user can add his own name, right? So we'll type input, type text, placeholder, enter your name, and we'll save it. Here we have enter your name, blah blah blah. Nothing happens, of course, because it's just an input. So what we want to do now is to show here down below hello and the name, right? So how can we do that? In JavaScript in general we should write some code to actually read the input text in here and replace it here with the name. But in Angular it's sufficient to declare another directive, which is ngModel. So we'll use ngModel and we'll call it my name, okay? And here we'll use ngBind. I'll tell you in a minute what this is. So let's use a span ngBind equals my name again. Okay? So let's save our application, let's refresh, and let's give it a shot. Hello, trainee. You see the magic now? Every time I type into the input, automatically the page refreshes with whatever I type in. So if it's Alex, it will show Alex or whatever else. And to do that, we just wrote two simple lines of code, and let's have a look at those. So ngModel here is telling that this input type is binded to a specific model. So think about that as a variable. Okay, so it's just telling that whatever the user types in here should be saved into the my name model, okay, which is consider that as a variable, as a piece of data in our scope. ngBind is saying, okay, here you need to use whatever this model contains. So I'm referencing the model, my name, in here, and so whenever somebody types in the input text field, ngBind will take the value from their input and show that in here. And this happens thanks to the two-way data binding. So every time the model gets updated, also the view gets updated, and vice versa. ngbind can also be written in a more easy way, which is by using two curly brackets like this and type my name. So if we save and we refresh our page, it will work anyways. Hello Alex again. So it's up to you guys to decide which one you want to use, but anyway, further on I'll give you a little bit more of context about ngbind written in the traditional way or by using double curly brackets. Okay, we're about to close this lesson, and before doing that I have to tell you that I set a small lie to you guys, but in a good way. I told you to consider the model as a variable, a piece of data, but let's just use the proper terminology from now on and think about it as a property from your scope. We'll be creating different properties in the scope of our application later on, so remember that. ngbind instead is correct to say that it evaluates the model. So if we type a property in here, it will anyway show the value. But what ngbind does is to evaluate an expression. And by expression, I mean also math calculations like 1 plus 2, for example. So let's save it. And as you will see, it will return 3. What happens if I type 1 plus 20? Well, it will return 21. So we'll go through all the different kind of usages of ngbind later on. For now, what I wanted to show you guys is how easy it is to set up an Angular application. What we just did, to recap, is we define our ng app, our module. We have declared our module in here. We will need that later. And we have created a nice input text that is binding to an ng model, a specific property called my name, and we show the value of the property using ngbind, and we wrote that again using double curly brackets. In the next lesson, we'll talk more about scope and controllers, and I hope you guys will enjoy it. If you have any questions about these specific lessons, leave a comment in the lesson, and I'll reply to you guys as soon as I can.